All right, babies. So this is an interesting one. And the first thing I tried doing was Googling this guy, Jacob Austin. I don't know if anyone knows him, but it seems to be a guy who talks about discipline a certain kind of way. Because the quote is, and today's video is, discipline as an emotion, cultivated and symptomatic / symptomatic. Jacob Austin. And this guy basically, Texas Word of North. Yeah, so Jacob and Austin is basically a whole lot of like, it's a very common name. But anyways, let's just imagine a guy that talks about discipline. And here, let's stick to the video instead of Google. Here. Discipline as an emotion, cultivated / symptomatic. And let's try to understand what this genius of a guy was saying. All right, when I first think of discipline, I think of waking up every day and doing something in the most unemotional way possible. Because we genuinely are not really just, we're doing stuff that we don't want to do, right? So we're kind of like detaching ourselves from the emotional state, which is we don't want to do it. And part of the reason why this probably intrigued me is because discipline itself is an emotion or is emotional. So we could actually like really extract. We don't have to approach it as mechanically as people make it out to be. It's literally what I always would say. I generally feel discipline is just being able to persist when something is actually required. And persist is the actual like word. It's not wake up any day, every day and do something a certain kind of way. It's when something needs to be done, make sure you do it all the way. And with this, I think discipline becomes a lot more attitude instead of behavior, right? No, he's saying discipline as an emotion is cultivated and symptomatic. Because just like when you're kind of like doing something and you feel, oh, you're doing this feels good, this doesn't feel good, and you're reacting to them, do we really apply that to discipline, or do we just kind of like act like horses in a race with like our eyes covered, like this is what needs to be done, this is what needs to be done, this one needs to be done? What is it that we actually do in the case of us kind of like when we actually need a bit of discipline in order for something to be finished? If I was to consider discipline as an emotion, the first thing I would do is basically reflect on the fact that that discipline is needed for consistency. And from an emotional perspective, our awareness of discipline will change as we approach something in a disciplined way. Just makes sense simply because, like, with everything you're doing, there's an experience. And if you're observing that experience, you're doing that thing and you're observing that experience, then that experience will change. Which means even when we're being disciplined or just approaching something because it needs to be done, if we're always objectively looking at the experience and not the outcome of the experience. I've talked to people that generally go to do an experience just because they wanted something new, but when the experience is done, they don't really like, they're like, I did it. It doesn't really click because they were more like, I just wanted to do it. I wanted to get that experience, but they don't really indulge in that experience. They don't allow it to be their thing. They don't allow it to be kind of like a big part of them. So the emotion of discipline is literally something that's measurable, just like everything else. And here he says cultivated and symptomatic. Like when you're sick, you start exhibiting symptoms, right? But symptomatic is not a negative thing because when you're happy, you exhibit symptoms. You start smiling like crazy. You're kind of like talking with a higher pitch, maybe. You're moving a lot more. You're not as tense because you're happy. It's a safe place that gets created with that feeling, right? And so if I approach discipline in that kind of way, then we can cultivate it because every single time we see a symptom that we don't like, we treat it or we handle why we don't like that symptom. And it's as simple as just asking yourself the question, why does this matter enough for me to be frustrated? Ultimately, I'm doing this because I think I need to be doing this, or this is something I chose to do, period. Whether it is spending 6 hours doing some research, or whether it is finishing a course online, or whether it is just hanging out with your parents, even though you know you're not going to have any decent conversation with them. All you're going to be doing is just engaging, sitting there and just like looking at the sky, mainly me. But the idea is just to be able to kind of like see when whatever you're doing is irking you, because that chips away from the disciplined state. And also see that whatever you're doing is actually making you feel a bit powerful, which allows you to use that to cultivate discipline in a different way. So the idea is to actually the formation of the relationship with discipline. And instead of you yourself claiming discipline, having discipline in your life. And okay, so let's use this metaphor. You have a garden and you plant tomato. You plant tomatoes. You have tomatoes in your garden, right? But your garden is not tomatoed. So it's the same. As part of my arsenal, I have discipline. I don't have to use it all the fucking time. A lot of people that are always disciplined, or at the very least, they're always structured. Like, I go to the gym like 6 times a week. That's discipline, right? Sometimes I go at 7 o'clock in the morning or eight because they open at eight. And sometimes I go at 2 o'clock at noon, and sometimes I go at 7 o'clock in the afternoon. That's still discipline. That's still the consistency that we want. Now, again, it's like planting a tree in your garden, but there are some people that would prune it every single day and like make sure it's looking exactly a certain kind of way for them to be comfortable with it. It does serve a purpose, but mainly they're the kind of person that just kind of like is always needs to be paying attention to something. I think these are the people that don't really know much. I don't know if they don't enjoy their own company more a lot, or just very much rigid. Like if I have time to do something, I'll just kind of create. I'll spend time doing it, or I'll make time to do it. Made a video about that once, but let's go back. Like I'd imagine the people that have a set schedule that doesn't move. Are they the ones who set that schedule, or are they just following the requirements of something in front of them? I've set schedules for myself before that were very like concise. You do this at this time, you finish this at this time. But it was a phase when something needed to be done and energy needed to be focused on. It was a beautiful phase, and I got a lot done. And I anticipate soon I will have a phase like that. Because once you start coding something and you have to produce, that will come to you. You start sitting on the computer, and then discipline will reveal itself. Why? Because you understand when you have to like engage with that plant in your garden, when you have to kind of like water it or cover it or take better care of it so that it fruits. Damn, man, why is this like connecting? I think it's the symptomatic part that I actually like the most. It's because you can see symptoms of you actually, you see the symptoms that call for discipline, or is it you see the symptoms from discipline. Because it can work both ways. Literally, like, if I have a feeling that goes, I don't want to do this, that's a symptom of lack of discipline. And if I say, I want to do this, that's something you can cultivate upon because it's a symptom for like better discipline. I don't want to say more, better. Because ultimately, maybe you working 4 hours a day on something for the next month doesn't fit your style of operation in this world. Maybe working 2 hours a day for the next 2 weeks is enough to finish the project. The 4 hours a day is just you pressuring yourself an extra 2 hours. But at least you get to claim to be disciplined. So the idea behind discipline as an emotion is literally the cultivation of that emotion. It's like picking up on the flow. It's like seeing how you're actually engaging with things and having that as an experience that gives you feedback. And the more you're engaged with that, with any experience, the more you're engaged with it, the different the actual experience becomes. And that's the beauty of it, the evolution. Super fun. Discipline as an emotion. Thank you, Mr. Jacob Austin. It's a video.